Good morning. Thank you for joining. Mr. Ross is the science advisor to the Schiller Institute. He is also the secretary treasurer of the LaRouche organization. He has spoken internationally on issues related to infrastructure, science, and development with a focus on the non-scalar economic value of scientific advance. He's also had many trips around the world. Most recently, I believe, was his trip to Afghanistan with a Schiller delegation of 7 individuals who had been invited to speak at a forum there, which I believe had around 600 people at it, discussing the question of how you get peace through development.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Mr. Ross and Ms. Freeman. I'm thrilled to have you in this meeting, and it is my honor to be with you here in this online webinar. And I want to say thank you to both of you for preparing this online meeting, and I hope to have a great time and together in these moments. First of all, I wanted to introduce ODVV as a director, and then the floor is yours, and we will hear your presentations. As you know, the Organization for Defending Victims of Violence is a non-governmental organization with a special consultative status from 1998, which is located in Tehran, and it has another branch in Geneva. We conduct different programs, especially in international arenas and in human rights fields, such as HRC, Human Rights Council sessions. I'm in different international arenas, and we are a member of Coalition for International Criminal Court. One of the activities that we have done recently, actually after the situations in Gaza, is to, for example, provide different letters to special rapporteurs and to have written and oral statements in different items, such as item 7 in Human Rights Council. And we focus on these matters. And in my perspective, so your purpose and the aim of your institute is to solving this problem, I mean the conflict among the parties. And so it is really interesting for me, especially to hear how we can solve this problem. As you know, we are dealing with different violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law in Gaza. And after your presentation, my colleagues and I will ask you some questions actually related to the topic you will present. The floor is yours, and thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Mahabi, for the kind invitation to speak with you today. I think that we would like to begin also by offering our condolences on the loss of your 2 leaders, the president and the foreign minister. And we hope that the country moves forward well.
Thank you very much.
The situation in Gaza is absolutely devastating, as we all know, and I don't think we need to reiterate right now. But one thing that I do want to say to put the project, the Oasis Plan, into context is the enormous transformations going on around the world with the democratization or multipolar development in international relations, where the rules-based international order, as it is called, of the US and the UK is really fading in prominence. As more nations join together through new fora, such as the BRICS, which Iran has now been invited into, along with other countries surrounding Gaza, Israel, Palestine, such as Egypt, UAE, the invitation to Saudi Arabia. action at the International Court of Justice, led by South Africa, is very notable. Here is a BRICS member, here is a country of the global South, and it is standing up and taking on a moral authority for saying what is right. The action by the International Criminal Court in putting a proposal for arrest warrants for Netanyahu, Gallant, and 3 Hamas leaders, I think with the support and encouragement of many UK lawyers, represents a shift on this issue in particular. But the broadest picture is, what direction will the world as a whole go in? Anglo-American NATO dominance or hegemonism, it's simply over. And the question is, will it end with the development of a new paradigm of relations, or will it end with global war? And the reckless decisions made by President Biden, by the American Congress, towards sending more weapons with longer ranges to Ukraine to strike into Russia, with presenting Israel with essentially complete impunity to any of its actions, and with its attacks on China, Iran, the BRICS process, is running against the tide of history, and certainly against the tide of justice. So in this context, I'd like to discuss in brief the plan that the Schiller Institute has put forward for what's called the Oasis Plan. So I'm going to share my screen here. Yeah, let's get the presentation up. Okay. So I presume that's visible properly. Title, okay, good. So the Oasis Plan, just to give it the broadest outline at first, this is a proposal made by the American economist Lyndon LaRouche since the 1970s, actually, in putting forward a way to take on the greatest enemy of all people in the region. It's the desert. This is an extremely arid area. The groundwater reserves are limited and are being overutilized. To give one example, in Gaza, before the recent, I don't even know what you might call it, ethnic cleansing, before this, in Gaza, 160 million cubic meters of water were withdrawn from aquifers. But the aquifers are only actually capable of providing 50 million cubic meters. So they're overused 300%. The result of this is that with too much water sucked out of the aquifer, other water gets drawn into it. This includes seawater. This includes wastewater. And this is why, even before the recent conflict, it was a serious problem in ensuring safe and adequate, even drinking water in Gaza, let alone agricultural use. Across the region, what LaRouche proposed is the establishment of numerous desalination plants to take water from the ocean and turn it into fresh water, and to build 2 new water conveyances to assist in this. One from the Mediterranean through Gaza to the Dead Sea. This would allow for desalination along the way, and it would help refill the Dead Sea, and because of the Dead Sea's low elevation, also produce hydroelectricity. There would be a second water conveyance going up from the Red Sea, from the Gulf of Aqaba through Jordan, along what would have been the Jordan River to the Dead Sea. Similarly, this would be an opportunity for desalination, capable of supplying Amman, Jordan, among other places. Amman has a serious water crisis. It similarly is dramatically overusing the resources, the groundwater resources that exist, and is in desperate need of a new source of water. The idea would be that by eliminating or by reducing the role of water in fomenting conflict and serving as a limited good over which regional people fight, the joint development of new water systems would help reduce this concern and, very importantly, provide a direction for the positive development of the whole region. Right now, more countries are recognizing the state of Palestine, although the US has vetoed this in the UN Security Council. But a state must be able to sustain itself. And without a new source of water, the Palestinian state will be unable to develop in the way that it should. Other parts of this proposal include the construction of new transportation routes and joining the region as a whole into the Belt and Road Initiative, into the World Land Bridge. The entire region of Southwest Asia is one of the most significant in the world. It's significant for the reason that it is the crossroads between three continents. This is where Europe, Asia, Africa come together. So it would be entirely natural that this would be a place of great cooperation, of great transportation flows, and in the future, one of the wealthiest and most prosperous parts of the world due to this advantageous geographic position. So the basis of economic development, I'd like to read one quotation from Lyndon LaRouche, after whom the LaRouche organization takes its name and inspiration, on the uniqueness of us as human beings. LaRouche wrote, "Each person is given the intellectual potential which no animal has, the power not only to imagine states of nature which have never before existed in the universe, but, under certain restrictions, to impose those ideas efficiently upon the universe generally. The condition to accomplish this is that that imagination is brought into accord with universal lawfulness. It is creativity so defined which represents the individual person's intellect, cast in the image of God's efficiently creative intellect. By this means, one is enabled to recognize, among one's own efficient forms of intellectual states, a quality which is a reflected image of God." Clearly not a reflection of God in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense. Because of his conviction that the human mind is the ultimate resource, LaRouche wrote a book in the 1970s called "There Are No Limits to Growth." And this book took aim at the Club of Rome's report called "The Limits to Growth." This institution, the Club of Rome, said that humanity was essentially doomed because I'm just going to turn off the screen for a moment. The Club of Rome said that because of limited resources, humanity was essentially destined to die of lack of resources, of pollution, of overpopulation, etc. And they were wrong. The ideology that growth is bad, or that human beings changing the environment is inherently bad, this is a major impediment to development in the world today. So allow me to say more about the form of energy use, how this relates to water supplies and to development. The first major technology in this regard that separated human beings from the animals was the use of fire. Through fire, we were able to protect ourselves from animals. We could cook food to make it safe to eat and also more delicious. We could do some improvements in our stone tools, things like this. With the development of charcoal, this is a very old picture, but by turning wood into charcoal, it then became possible not only to have a better source of fuel that burns more cleanly, which is nice if you're cooking inside your home and don't want smoke, but also was of a intensity or a density able to perform chemical work. The green stone is malachite. On the left, that small piece of metal is copper, which was produced from that malachite through a chemical process and a heat-based process. Charcoal allowed us to enter the era of metallurgy, to have the Bronze Age, to create iron. The use of coal made it possible, instead of relying on trees, to save the forests and to be able to power steam engines, locomotives, power plants, transforming our distance relations between each other, transforming our economic potential. And today, we are increasingly shifting towards the highest forms of energy, of electrical energy. Overall, it is impossible to have a highly developed country without energy. In this chart, every dot is a nation. In the horizontal direction is the amount of energy use per person. In the vertical is the GDP per capita in PPP terms. GDP is not the best measure of economic development, but this graph, I think, shows very clearly that economic development is impossible without adequate energy resources, and in Southwest Asia or arid regions, clearly water resources. We can use the proxy of lighting to get a sense of development around the world, areas of underdevelopment, and energy needs. The highest form of energy source is the nucleus. On the left is a molecule of methane, natural gas as it's called. Its combustion produces 8 units of energy. On the right is a nuclear reaction, similar to what occurs in the sun, and which human beings create in experiments here on Earth. For each reaction, it creates over 17 million units of energy. Nuclear power is so efficient, so productive, that this is why Lyndon LaRouche has long promoted it, and especially in its role in the large energy needs of water desalination and economic development. So let me skip ahead. I have, I think, more than is necessary. Let's get to the region. So taking a look even at a map of the region, the borders of the 1967 borders of Gaza Strip, West Bank are marked here very faintly. But even without seeing the line, you can see the political difference in terms of how green the area is. This is a result of long-term domination by Israel of the region's water resources to the detriment of its neighbors, and reflects the overall lack of water in the area. To put some numbers on this, this is before the recent situation. On average, Israelis use 247 liters of water per person. The World Health Organization recommends an availability of 100 liters per person. Palestinians living on the West Bank, 82.4 liters. And those in communities not connected to the water grid, which is a great many, 26 liters of water per day. And this last group has about 10% the water use of the Israelis. The solution is not only a more just distribution of the existing water, it's the creation of new water. This is an elevation map of the area that shows the enormously low elevation, 400 meters below sea level, of the Dead Sea, which makes it an excellent source for hydropower potential. This is a chart of rainfall. Extremely, extremely dry in many areas. In terms of the level of overall water per person, even compared to Syria and Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Palestine, far below. This is a remarkably arid region. So let's think about how the resolution of the water shortages could change the politics of the area. This is the Jordan River Valley. This is all the water sources that flow into the Jordan River. Up at the north is the Golan Heights, seized and administered by Israel. Part of the reason for this is military regarding its elevation, but the other part is to prevent Syria from building dams, water projects that would reduce the flow of water into the Sea of Galilee, on which Israel depends for its national water supply. The Golan Heights issue would be very different if there was ample sources of water. This is the current Israeli system of water distribution. In red, the national water carrier takes water from Lake Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee, and brings it through Israel. And as you can see, of course, these lines do not enter the Palestinian territories. Israel itself has built several desalination plants, which is notable. The growth of desalinated water as total water use in Israel has increased. It's now 1/4 of all water use. This is the direction for the region as a whole. So let me say one more thing about the Jordan connection. So this is from the Red Sea up to the Dead Sea. We would be able to build a waterway, not a canal, not for shipping, but for water supply, that would be able to provide water for the city of Aqaba, for that region, and then up by the Dead Sea, another desalination plant that could pump water, as you see in this image, up north to Amman, to new cities to be built in the desert areas southeast of Amman. This is a real vision for what the future could be. In the context of regional connectivity, of connecting to rail through Syria, being able to then get to up to Lebanon and beyond, connections that would expand throughout the region, including Iran, this region absolutely could become a center of world trade, logistics, development. The last thing I'd like to address is a historical example taken from Europe that I think can be relevant for the current situation, and that is the 30 Years' War. This was a war in Europe from 1618 to 1648 that was considered a religious war. Two branches of Christianity, Protestants and Catholics as they are called today, had such devastating fighting in war that spread really many places in the continent that the population levels of Germany were reduced by 1/3. It took centuries for the population to recover from this fighting. This was the borders and the political divisions in the area, extremely complex. But what the peace did, and it took years to establish it, the treaty that finally ended this 30 Years' War, this religious in part fighting, the Treaty of Westphalia, had two aspects that I want to emphasize as a model for today. The first, in the text in bold below, that this peace must be so honest and seriously guarded and nourished that each part furthers the advantage, honor, and benefit of the other. A peace treaty based on recognizing the advantage of the other, of acting for the benefit of the other. Second is the sense of the future. Quote, "On both sides, all should be forever forgotten and forgiven. What has from the beginning of the troubles, no matter how or where, from one side or the other, happened in terms of hostility. Everything should be completely put aside so that everything, whatever one could demand from another under his name, will be forgotten to eternity." The Oasis Plan, logistically, is not the full solution. There is clearly political discussion to be had. International pressure is extremely important in this. Negotiations must occur. The US in particular must change its policy of supporting everything that Israel does. But in that context, it's my view, that having a worked out vision of the economic development of the region will play a significant role in making possible outcomes that would otherwise be impossible. If the focus were kept more isolatedly on political matters, I think that it would lose the sense of, well, we would be lacking the sense of what the future could be and the reason for achieving peace, the real vision of a better future for our children, for our grandchildren, for the coming generations. So that's what I would like to say in overview about the LaRouche Oasis Plan and our perspective.
Thank you very much for your, explanation. You know, this idea of Oasis Plan was so attractive to me. And as Mr. Mohammadi Yadullah sent me some links, and I started surfing the net. And I came to the conclusion that the whole plan seems to be a comprehensive, inclusive development plan. It's much, much more than providing the region with water, although it is based on water, equal access to water, but it is much more than that. It seems to be, beneficial to the whole region. Both to Israel, the Palestine, and all the neighboring countries, Jordan, Syria. And frankly, it seemed to me to be so, incredible. And my question is that while the plan seems to be it appears at least at the theory level, it appears to be so beneficial to all parties. So apart from the US, political position that you just mentioned, what other obstacles do you see that so far have prevented this plan to enter any phase of implementation?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think that two things I would point to is, you brought up already US opposition. I'd like to point also to the longer trends in the region, which were dominated by the British Empire. So the creation of Israel, the Britain-controlled mandatory Palestine, the British Mandate of Palestine. It administered it for the League of Nations. It had a long influence in the area. And part of the British goal was to keep the ability to create conflict whenever necessary. The British Empire, this tiny island that controlled so much of the world to such terrible effect, the way they were able to succeed, if you can say success in that, was by causing people to fight each other. They didn't rely on their own military. The way they would control people in a certain area, they would cause conflicts, they would get people to fight each other. So setting up the whole region for ongoing conflict to prevent the land-based connectivity between Europe, between Asia, between Africa. This also benefited the British sea-based, trade-based economic dominance. They controlled the oceans to a large degree, and the development of land connectivity was a threat to their ability to control world trade. So those are some of the other geopolitical reasons that go further back over a century in the region that should be kept in mind. The other issue that we're facing, at least today, is among Western countries, if I may say that, is a real resistance to infrastructure in general. And this comes from an anti-growth mindset, from viewing the world from the standpoint of scarcity, of limitations in resources, and not thinking about how to create abundance, how to use our wonderful minds, which are able to discover new solutions to problems, to ensure that we are able to create the resources that we need. So, for example, there are definitely environmentalists rather, that would oppose this project, saying changing the ocean salinity would be bad, transforming the climate of the region would be bad. So this is a very, I think, anti-human ideology, which also affects the minds of people who want to do good. So those are two other factors that I think are prominent in the difficulties so far. achieving this it's not going to be one project that is built. This is a local, the Oasis Plan is a local manifestation of, as you said, a comprehensive world outlook. And that means leaving the age of empire.
Thank you very much. So, although the plan looks to be wonderful with all the obstacles on the way, I'm not sure. Let me put my question this way. If there are other parties, for example, like us, who are interested in the peace in the region, in the political stability of the region, is there any way we can support this plan or any similar plans? I have no voice. Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Sorry. I
cannot hear you.
I think the biggest way is to simply inject this into the discussion. There are many discussions taking place right now of people looking in horror at what is happening in Gaza, people who want to do something about it, people who recognize the injustice. And I think that the more that we can we can participate in these discussions by presenting this plan, I think that people perhaps don't know about it, or I think also there is a great deal of cynicism, of pessimism, of a belief that really there never will be peace, but we should still oppose injustice. So to me, taking a strong stand of a big project, of saying, hey, if we could do anything in this region, what would it be? Thinking on an enormous scale is a way also emotionally to break through that pessimism and say, hey, it's not just that injustice is occurring, but there is a withholding of this greatest form of justice, of the development that will help everybody have a good life. So I think spreading the word, causing the discussion to occur, and then I think as a result of that, we'll be addressing some of the cultural pessimism that makes it difficult to think about how to succeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the presentation. And we all really, hope and pray for a better future for the region. And we just try to do whatever we can. I would like to invite my colleagues and the participants if they have any questions or comments or.
Yes, thank you. Can I have a question?
Sure.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, colleagues. Especially thanks for your kind, comprehensive presentation. It was very interesting, especially because it's focusing on the economic parts, which actually it's benefit of all individuals who are living in the region. Of course, some things that I was thinking about it's about the political will. Actually, you refer it to this issue in some part of your speech. But, in some cases that we see the government or some other parties, their political wills are more powerful than the economic parts of these kind of plans. What is your next step or your next plan in order to justify such kind of plan and accompany the government or other stakeholders with you in order to implement this kind of, activities in the region? Especially in another part of my questions is that some other governments or some other countries in the region who has influence in the peace, especially in the Middle East or West Asia, may not be included in such kind of projects. What's your plan for that countries, or stockholders, how you will justify your project in this part. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that you're right in identifying, I agree with you in your identification of a conflict between the political actions that countries are taking and their own economic self-interest, as I understand your thoughts. This is very dramatic in the countries of the so-called West, where it has bad effects not only internationally through Gaza, through Ukraine, which is just, they're sending more and more weapons. They're not going to defeat Russia, and it's going to kill a lot more Ukrainians. It's really very bad. At the same time, look at the economic situation domestically in these nations. Energy prices are going up. Inflation is going up. The rents, the housing costs are going up. So the United States faces the same situation with the way its own people are being treated by the elites. It's similar, I don't want to say the same, of course, but it's similar to the way countries internationally are mistreated. So the problems to me come together, and this is something that I stress when speaking with Americans, that in the United States, to take one example, people are very insular. They think about the United States as the whole world, and they don't think that much about the rest of it. Not everybody, but this is common in the United States. And it's really helpful to give these people a sense that, one, the world is changing in a good way. Two, we could be a part of that. And that three, you could reflect on this in terms of how our own political system operates, in terms of what the intentions are by those in politics. So the LaRouche organization has endorsed two candidates who are running to be members of the Congress, both the House and the Senate in New York State. And in their campaigning, these two, Diane Sare and Jose Vega, they talk about this perspective. They talk about the international viewpoint. So to rescue the morality or the soul of the United States or of other similar countries, a change in policy is needed. This means a cultural change in terms of people demanding things of their leaders, not just complaining, but saying, here's what we should do. I demand that you do this. In terms of the international cooperation on this project, the Oasis Plan, the development of the region, this is an enormous undertaking, and it cannot be financed only by Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians, for sure. So what role can other countries play? The Gulf Cooperation Council countries have enormous sovereign wealth funds. There are other engineering abilities in the broader region, construction and so forth, including in Iran. And China has had a great deal to offer the world in terms of exporting its engineering and infrastructure development abilities. So this project, if, for example, the countries of the region, the expanded BRICS, China, the United States, were to imagine this, if these groupings were to get together and say the fighting has to stop, and look, here's the future that we are going to have. We're going to help make this possible. I think sending that message will play a powerful role in making possible the resolution of the political differences. I hope this addresses your...
Thank you very much.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much for all your very good comments. Any other questions from Mr. Mohammadi?
No, just thank you very much for your explanation and comprehensive answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm wondering if there are any other people. Not sure if Mr. Adib would like to say something. Apparently, no.
No,
yeah.
I think the explanations were so inclusive and conclusive, and I think
A little bit louder, please.
I think we should just think about it more and consider it in the future. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Most welcome. Yeah, it seems to be a promising plan, and we would really wish it was possible to implement it in a way that, because it seems to be that all of the countries of the region would be able to benefit from the plan. And the roads that the plan was proposing to build, and the connection between the countries would be so beneficial, economically beneficial to all of the region, bringing more assets and resources to everybody. We are looking forward to being able to move forward into a phase of development, and being able to just say goodbye to this era of war and killing and genocide and apartheid and discrimination, and this attempt of trying to grab the resources for yourself and not sharing, and not, as you said, the scarcity view that thinks that if we have something, we should keep it, and there's not enough resources with all of the people. While if we can change our mind, we can adopt a new approach. Maybe we will be able to provide all of the people with sufficient resources so that they will not have to kill each other over scarcity. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would be ready to say goodbye. Thank you very much, and wish you the best with your plan. And we will do whatever we can to support it.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Goodbye. Goodbye,
Bye-bye.
Ms. Friedman. Goodbye, Mr. Ross. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you all.
Thank you.